Falcons fans, there's been a lot of smoke this offseason, free agency rumors, quarterback speculation, draft uncertainty, but now, with the NFL draft just days away in Green Bay, the fog is finally starting to lift. And what's becoming increasingly obvious is this: the Falcons are quietly putting the pieces together for a big push in 2025. And I'm here to give you all the details, so hit that like button and join us to stay in the know. Now, you can see it in the roster moves, the scouting decisions, and even the subtle power plays behind the scenes. And maybe, just maybe, a big change at center is still in the works. Let's break down what's going on. We start with a name you might not expect to hear again in 2025. Kevin King. The Falcons have officially re-signed the veteran cornerback, who played in 15 games last season, mostly on special teams, but began seeing defensive snaps as the season wore on. His journey back to football has been nothing short of remarkable. After missing the 2022 season for personal reasons and all of 2023 with a ruptured Achilles tendon, King returned in last year's preseason opener against Miami and announced his presence with a game-changing interception of Skylar Thompson. That 29-yard return didn't go down in the record books, but for King, it counted. It wasn't, "Can I come back?" It was, "No, I'm back," he said after the game. King's second chance is more than just a feel-good story. It's about trust. Falcons assistant head coach Jerry Gray and secondary coach Justin had both coached King in Green Bay. Their belief in him helped bring him to Atlanta last year, and their continued support is what earned him another contract. Gray said it simply: "I trust him wholeheartedly." That kind of backing doesn't just happen for any player, especially one with King's injury history. But King is walking into a cornerback room that still belongs to A.J. Terrell and Mike Hughes, with depth from D. Alford, Clark Phillips III, Natrone Brooks, and new additions Mike Ford and Keith Taylor. King's role may be rotational, but don't be surprised if his reps increase again in 2025. Now, while the Falcons are shoring up depth in the secondary, one of their biggest rivals is taking a major hit. According to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, Saints quarterback Derek Carr may miss the 2025 season due to a significant shoulder injury. He's reportedly weighing surgery, and the team's quarterback room, currently featuring Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, and Ben DiNucci, is anything but stable. Carr's 2024 was already marred by injuries, a fractured left hand in Week 14 and a concussion that ended his season early. Before going down, he completed 67.7% of his passes with 2,145 yards, 15 touchdowns, and just 5 interceptions. The Saints went 5-5 under his guidance, including a split against Atlanta. But this injury could be the turning point in the NFC South. Suddenly, the division is wide open. New Orleans holds the 9th pick in the draft, and while head coach Kellen Moore publicly backed Carr just weeks ago, the injury news could force their hand. With most veterans off the market, the Saints may be forced to draft a quarterback. That opens a huge opportunity for the Falcons. An already shaky Saints team may now be without its leader for the entire season. And speaking of quarterbacks and draft picks, let's talk about Kirk Cousins. Yes, his name is still floating around in trade speculation, and according to the Athletic's Diana Rossini and Jacob Robinson, there might still be a path forward. The Cleveland Browns remain the frontrunner in a potential deal, but the Pittsburgh Steelers, who lack a second-round pick this year due to the DK Metcalf trade, are reportedly not out of the picture. The logic is clear: if the Steelers strike out in the draft and fail to land a viable quarterback, Cousins becomes their backup plan. The twist? Cousins has a no-trade clause, and his camp has no intention of waiving it until after the draft concludes on April 26th. That makes these next few weeks crucial. If either Cleveland or Pittsburgh passes on a quarterback, don't be surprised if Atlanta starts fielding calls. Still, there's skepticism. James Palmer of Bleacher Report reported that Arthur Smith, now on the Steelers staff and formerly Atlanta's head coach, has done his homework through his connections with the Falcons and didn't like what he heard about Cousins' play. That insider knowledge might be enough to kill any real momentum toward a deal. So here's the Falcons' situation in a nutshell. They've got a quarterback with trade value, a defense quietly being rebuilt with trusted veterans and coaching continuity, and a division rival likely losing its QB1. And with the number 15 pick in the draft, Atlanta can pivot in multiple directions depending on how the board shakes out. We're entering a defining stretch for this team. One calculated draft, one shrewd trade, or one bold statement pick could send the Falcons surging into the NFC playoff conversation. But the question is, what move will they make? And that's where I want to bring you in. Do you think Kevin King deserves a bigger role this season? How does Derek Carr's injury change your expectations for the NFC South? And should the Falcons wait and see with Cousins, or try to move him as soon as the draft ends? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. With the dust still settling from the Derek Carr injury update and Kirk Cousins speculation, it's hard to ignore how perfectly the pieces are aligning for the Atlanta Falcons to take control of the NFC South. And yet, even with the Saints potentially without a starting quarterback, and the Panthers and Buccaneers still trying to define their own identities, the Falcons know that this opportunity means nothing without action. The front office can't afford to sit still. Not when the division is in flux. Not when the draft is a week away. Not when every move could define whether this team finally makes the leap or stagnates again. That's why the developments surrounding Cousins are so compelling. On one hand, we have national insiders like Diana Rossini and Jacob Robinson suggesting that there's real interest out there, particularly from quarterback-needy teams like the Browns and Steelers. The idea is simple. In a draft year where second-round quarterback talent is strong but unpredictable, a veteran like Cousins becomes a stabilizing backup. For the Steelers, lacking a second-round pick, the absence of a starting quarterback would put them in trouble. Cousins offers a bridge. A known commodity. A guy who can lead a team with playoff aspirations. But on the other hand, Bleacher Report's James Palmer is throwing cold water on the situation. According to him, Arthur Smith, a man who worked closely with Cousins in Atlanta, has already spoken to his former teammates and gathered enough inside scouts to make the Steelers back down. If that's true, and if Smith's assessment is widely shared, Cousins may not have the trade market some fans expect. Add to that his refusal to waive his no-trade clause until after the draft, and Atlanta could be left with a quarterback with a hefty contract and a shrinking trade window. Still, don't rule out a last-minute move. If a team like Cleveland doesn't hit its draft targets and panics, they could come calling. It all depends on what happens in those first 33 picks. In the meantime, the Falcons need to have a plan in place, not just for trading Cousins, but for reshaping the roster if they keep him. Which brings us back to the draft. The Falcons will enter the first round with the number 15 pick, and if you've been paying attention, it's becoming clear that cornerback depth is being quietly analyzed ahead of the big day. Kevin King's re-signing wasn't just sentimental, it was strategic. You have Terrell and Hughes locked in as starters, but the Falcons are making sure their depth chart is built to handle a long season. King brings familiarity, experience, and confidence from the coaching staff. Players like Clark Phillips III and Mike Ford are in position to rotate, but with King back in the mix, Atlanta gains a veteran with ball skills and size who's already earned his stripes. And then there's the wild card, how the Saints will react to losing Derek Carr. The 9th pick in the draft puts them in the crosshairs of several top quarterback prospects, but even if they go that route, they'll be handing the reins to a rookie. That's not an ideal scenario for a team already struggling offensively. The Falcons, with their quarterback situation still unresolved but stable for now, suddenly find themselves with a real advantage. If they play their cards right, adding pass rushers in the draft, strengthening the secondary, and managing the Cousins saga, their path to the NFC South title becomes not only passable, but wide open. So now it's just a matter of waiting. Will the Falcons release Cousins if the draft goes their way? Will Kevin King become more than just a depth piece in 2025? Will the Saints' quarterback crunch pave the way for Atlanta to take control of the division? What do you think of all this? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Go Falcons!